Hello, and welcome once again to Escaping Dystopia. My name is Wah. I'll be your host today. Today is March 22nd, 2025. Today's episode, The Disconnect. There is a large and perhaps growing disconnect on a variety of topics in the United States right now. Our country is going through some massive changes, and a lot of people don't know about it or don't care or are actively cheering it, but don't understand what that means to them or how it's going to affect them, which puts us in a hugely precarious situation led by a fascist moron who really doesn't understand much of anything. And those closest to him know this best. So I'm going to start today with the fascist question, because this has been a topic previously in my shows. I think it's the most important thing to talk about, because we all need to get on the same page to move forward. There are a number of folks out there, and I'll call out specifically Jon Stewart. He's one of these folks that we need to talk about. And another one that I'd like to call out, this Tom Nichols guy. Again, these are two people who have, over the years, mocked multiple people who've pointed out that Donald is a fascist. And now that Donald has made it clear that he is, everybody needs to start using this word. And if you don't think that Donald is a fascist, draw your line. Tell me what you think a fascist would do, or how a fascist would act, or if he did this, I would say he was a fascist. Or what is your line? I need to know now. People need to say it now. You need to get these folks like this on the hook for saying what they think it is. Because, and I'll tell you this, for almost every single person who has one, who can define and say, oh, if somebody did this, I would call it fascist, Donald has already done it. Within the last 2 months, he's already done that thing. That's a challenge for all these folks like Nichols and Stewart and basically everybody who writes for The Atlantic and most of the New York media establishment. What is it going to take to get you folks on the same page? Because everybody needs to start using this word, right? Fascist. It's a real word. And historically, the way fascism comes to a country is through a democracy where minorities are demonized, and then deported, and then murdered. The historical pattern here is so clear, and we're walking it. But there's a disconnect, and I'm going to talk about the disconnect. And it's a tough one to talk about because of a few things. So before we go to this a little bit, I want to talk a little bit about Spaceship Earth, which is my kind of thing. That's why I'm in a bubble here. This is my moral philosophy, something I'll talk about every now and again. But the idea here is to have a moral philosophy that is based on our experience here on this rock, on this planet, with knowable things based in science and reality. And let's go ahead and jettison these supernatural religions that don't have any way to be confirmed or denied, can't even come up with questions on or definitions for terms like God or what they mean by these things. And this has been like a moral foundation for our species for a while, and it's ridiculous and it's bad, so we need to fix it. So that's what Spaceship Earth philosophy and a lot of this is about, is building a new kind of moral foundation for our planet. So knowing where I come from on this sense, that I am not a believer in religious moral philosophy, but do very much think that moral action is worthwhile to pursue and to understand and root out and develop and identify. Let's talk about this next thing. Anti-Semitism and anti-Semitism. Because this is one of those subjects, this is one of the huge disconnects. We have a president now, we literally have this going on. Musk retweets Hitler didn't murder millions message amid ongoing Nazi controversy. The ongoing Nazi controversy is that Musk and multiple people around Donald and part of this movement keep making Nazi salutes. Again, how obvious does it need to be? And then when it's so obvious, wait, why isn't this being called out? What is the disconnect? Because clearly this is going on, but at the same time, we have the Trump administration claiming they can deport a green card holder, a permanent resident, because he protested genocide in Israel. That is the disconnect, right? We have Musk in the White House making Nazi salutes and doing all sorts of stuff, denying all his right-wing Twitter followers. JD Vance follows multiple neo-Nazis on Twitter. This is not new information. It is media. It is information our media doesn't want to talk about. And that's one of the things that this is part of the big disconnect. And I hate to talk about this because this is one of the things here, right? Because this is also going on at the same time, right? You have the White House putting out an executive order against anti-Semitism, taking away millions, hundreds of millions of dollars from universities because they're protesting the genocide that's going on. The U.S. avoids talking about literal ethnic cleansing and taking over this land. There continue to be mass slaughters. There was 400, 500 Palestinians killed this last week during a ceasefire in Israel. And so this disconnect between our major media and people and what's going on and these terms and these words and fascism, because some people seem to think and have this idea that fascism can only exist in the fascist regency of Europe and it must involve targeted violence against Jews, and without that, it just doesn't count. So maybe they need a different word. I don't know, because there is a word for what happens when democracies do this. And that word is fascism. That's the word. There's a couple things that I'm going to talk about too, moving on from this, but that is a huge disconnect in our media and the people and what's going on with things. There's so much of what is being called anti-Semitism, including all these protests, is protests against a genocide that we are now supporting wholeheartedly as a country. I wrote a bit about Biden and his attempts to rein in Netanyahu and the Democratic Party side of that, which, again, let me bring up this, because this is actually kind of a fun, and I would highly recommend. I'm going to talk a little bit more about this. We're going to move on to the next topic here. Polls and vibes. So these are the exit polls from the 2024 election. They're good. They have a lot of good data in here to go through, and I recommend if you're curious about stuff. Just because as a data guy, this is the kind of stuff that I find wildly interesting. There's one thing about the data representation here that I'm not a huge fan of, right? I like the way that it's showing side to side, the kind of weighted that way, but this weighted also should be weighted vertically. So you know that 71% of the voters in this country are white. And this is from exit polling. This isn't so this is I don't know if I can call this the gold standard for polling, because polling is I'm a very critical of the entire industry, but this might be the good parts of it, right? Where you, after an election, what did you do and who are you, right? This is the kind of data that's extremely useful. It's hindsight data. You can't use this to predict because it's exit polling, right? So it has a different kind of flavor to it. So one of the things that's you can look from this and understand, because I myself am very critical of this thing called identity politics. And that line right there is a big reason why. Because 71% of the electorate is white. And if you want to define, and again, I know people have different definitions for this term, which I'll get to in a little bit about something else that I've got to show you, but with the simple base, these are what the words mean, identity politics, you're going to lose almost every time running on this, right? Because you got 71% of the population and you're losing by 15 points. But that's never been, that is what it is. And I'm not saying that the Democrats should go wide. They've always been an ultimate big party tent, but this identity politics thing and focusing on this kind of stuff, it's never been a big winner because as someone who's on the small side of all of these, I'm like, you guys realize how hard it is for me to stay here? Like, I have to put will in to stay here and not go with the flow. Anyway, moving on to one of the other things that I did want to talk about, and this goes back to the last thing. This has a lot of good stuff about various, again, ages, younger, older, men, women, just kind of breakdown. These are all kind of generalized. And remember, when you're looking at folks, you see 10 people, with these 49, you couldn't tell which one is which, right? If you see this group of even this, which is pretty strong, you've got 3 out of 6. So you're looking at, still a third of the folks that you run into that fit into these groups don't fit into the dominant one. And so that's one of the things that's hard to think about a little bit for some of these things. But this stuff is fun to look at if you want to try and understand a little bit more. So around the other issue that I do want to talk about here is education. Here's the other thing, family income. It's pretty split here. This actually, of course, is very surprising once these tax cuts, which I'm going to talk about here in a minute, are coming up, that Donald won with, but more kind of a lot of this. And this is where so many of the Democratic policies helped. But because the macroeconomic thing, and I would say that like this huge shift towards our economy, towards the upper end, which is again a result of these tax cuts, because the Democrats didn't reverse that, this continuing trend of grinding everybody down is still happening in the country. It's about to get way worse, but because the Democrats didn't split it around and change it when they had some power to do so, because again, they only had some power, they didn't have enough power to completely ignore all the laws, which again, we'll get to in a little bit, but this is part of the fascism. So the Democrats didn't act like fascists to sweep away all of our history to enact their policies. Donald is now doing that. But the one thing that I did want to bring out here, and this brings the other one too, and this is the religious side. And so this is one of the things that really brings the highlight for the difficulty of the questions that I'm talking about, because the Jewish population in the US is 80% supportive of Democrats. And the reason for this, of course, is Elon and his Nazi salute. And the Nazis and the right wing have always been a big part of that, right? Of the right wing in the United States. And the Jewish population in the United States knows that. But the Jewish population of the United States is 2%. It's a small population. It's a larger population en masse than actually lives in Israel, but it's a small part of our country. But one of the problems here, again, is this. On the Democratic side, you've got 80% of the Jewish population siding with the Republican Party on this. And this is where a lot of the largest donors in the Democratic Party are. And as I look up those, and I just say top donors 2024, right? Who are the biggest donors? And of course, we see Elon up at the top. We know about that, right? And we see a lot of red here. And this is what people don't quite still understand about the Citizens United universe that we live in here, and how hard it is for Democrats to win already. What you're fighting against is all the fucking money. This whole debt that we've run up over the last 20 years, this is it. These are the people who have it. We ran up debt, they got profits, and now they're funneling it back into Republicans with more debt. This is the cycle that's been going on. And as you get down here, you're like, oh, well, surely this, by the way, is the person who traded Luka to the Lakers, if you're wondering how dumb these people are. And then, of course, Elon up here. This is $300 million Elon pumped into the Republicans. So again, 300 million, 200 million, 150, 140, 100, 100, 100. And now you get to the top Democratic donor at 64 billion, and it's Michael Bloomberg. And the second one is Dustin Moskovitz, who I'm not that familiar with. But again, these are that 2%, right? This is the top part of the Democratic Party. And that's an uncomfortable conversation to have because of the implications across the board. But you have to realize that this is coming from someone, myself, who was called an anti-Semite because I didn't think we should invade Iraq, because I thought that Israel was kind of pushing us to do something. I was like, well, wait, why are we listening? And this is 20 years ago, y'all. This is the same folks. By the way, the guy who runs the Atlantic, huge fan of the Iraq war, if you're wondering about that. Again, this is part of our media system. This is part of the reality in the United States. This is why it's so hard to get funded if you're not on that particular issue on that side. It fucking sucks. And it's led us right to fascism. The new kind. Oh, tariffs and taxes. Let's move on to that. So on April 2nd, which is coming up quickly now, the Trump administration is going to, or maybe not, who knows, put a whole bunch of taxes and new tariffs in place. The idea here is that, well, it's a dumb idea because it doesn't make sense. They literally had the press secretary of the United States up there claiming that tariffs are tax cuts. Let me see if I can find that. I'm going to pause this for just a moment here and find my tariffs or tax cuts. All right, check this out. This is ridiculous.
When President Trump last addressed the BRT when he was on the campaign trail, his big push was on tax cuts. He's going there today.
We've got a huge deficit right now.
Tax hikes in the form of tariffs. And I'm curious for why he's prioritizing that over the tax cuts.
He's actually not implementing tax hikes. Tariffs are a tax hike on foreign countries that, again, have been ripping us off.
That Americans pay. This is the whole thing, right? And Donald is claiming, by the way, that a trade deficit is other countries rip us off, which it's not. So that's a stupid lie right there. So tariffs add a price. They add more. You have to pay more for tariffs. That's a tax. In the basic sense of you're going to pay more for this thing. The idea here that they're going to replace income taxes in this country is absurd. So the economy right now is in free fall. People aren't really talking about this too much because it takes nearly 3-6 months for this to all thing. And half of the people doing all that work have all been fired. So the numbers that are going to come out of the government over the next little bit are coming from departments run by this complete idiot. Oh my God. Okay. So this guy, right? This guy is something that I really have a hard time believing exists because he's that just stupid. This guy.
Let's say Social Security didn't send out their checks this month. My mother-in-law, who's 94, she wouldn't call and complain.
That's insanity.
She just wouldn't. She thinks something messed up and she'll get it next month.
Yeah.
Okay, so he's saying this guy is a billionaire. His wife, by the way, was just appointed by Trump to be on a trustee at the Kennedy Center. So this woman's probably going to that next premiere in a gown, showing up in a limo. She hasn't looked at her Social Security account in 20 years. And this guy's like, "Oh, she's fine. This is my example." And then he has the temerity.
A fraudster always makes the loudest noise, screaming, yelling, and complaining.
You know, that's an interesting observation regarding the fraudster thing, regarding your boss, who's the loudest complainer ever and is also a fraudster because he's convicted of multiple felons. This guy is just such a clown, just ridiculous clown. And the disconnect is how? Why is the middle class supporting someone who like this is so bad and dumb and does not care about them in the slightest? The failure was our media to inform people. Why is that? So speaking of failure of media and all the other things that I've been talking about, let's talk about Schumer and the Democrats. Let me think. Do I have a good Schumer video? I don't. But for those of you who don't know and are just catching up or whatever, I get everybody's got to be junkies if they're following this show at this point. Schumer caves. That's all I have to look for. Yep, there we go. And it is, by the way, all of these media websites, the amount of crap that they load for this stuff is ridiculous and insane and just so much. They're so bad. Our media is so broken. It's so broken. This could be a simple like text thing, and instead it's this. Like what? And this is infinite, by the way. This never ends. It does end. Like who? Like is this generating money for them at the cost of this credibility? And what's this video like? Again, a video trashing the Democratic Party because anyway. Schumer caved. The Senate Democrats had a chance to basically have the government shut down. They do what's called a CR, which is a continuing resolution, because, again, our government hasn't been functioning for years. And instead of forcing something through at some point over the last little bit, Democrats tried to keep following rules that are now completely obliterated. But Schumer caved. He came out, said he wasn't going to. Then he betrayed the party and everybody else, the entire House Democratic caucus, who all voted against the Republican bill. And then Schumer caved. He had a bunch of interviews where he's basically claiming to be really great about this and awesome at winning elections. And also has a book out. Do you know what Schumer's book is about? Like, again, you have to realize this guy is caving. All the other stuff is going on in this world. And Schumer book. Oh, anti-Semitism in America. And that's the thing about this, is where the warning here, and he's come out, and actually the guy, Khalil Muhammad, was one of the protesters at Columbia who was arrested, and they're trying to deport without any charges. Schumer's been like, yeah, that's fine. And Schumer on the genocide in Palestine was like, yeah, I mean, Hamas had it coming. They deserve it. This kind of stuff, this is the Senate Majority Leader. This is what he's focused on. And nowhere in this book are you going to see that the protests against genocide are legitimate. Right? Nowhere will you see even the admission that a discussion about that a genocide is going on is permitted. And that's the disconnect. This disconnect of age and wealth and power over the 21st century has really been enough to really, really bring the United States to its knees, to fascism. So on the court order stuff and on the fascism, we're going to try and wrap up a little bit. I was actually supposed to do all of this. I did this in the wrong order, but that's fine. We've got a few more things to cover here, so let's make sure we got them all. So there's the money. You know what's going on. There's the current death going on. There's Jon Stewart. He gets really mad at Schumer, and that's fine. He doesn't get this mad at Republicans. And for Stewart and these folks, we need them to draw the fascist line. Like, where is it, right? Is it stuck in 1940s Europe and can't leave there? Because it needs to get out of there as well. So this is one of the things here. It has come clear that one of the people that they sent to El Salvador against the judge's orders, by the way, the judge told them to stop sending these folks, and they sent them anyway. He was sent the evidence that they had that he was a gang member. It was just a tattoo on his arm of Real Madrid, which is a soccer team, by the way, for those of you who are Americans. And apparently he was going like this on social media, which they interpreted as satanic gang-related activity. Now, the Secretary of State under the 1798 they're quoting laws from 1798 trying to justify this stuff. And if you think, well, wait, wasn't the U.S. kind of fascist back when we had slavery? Yeah, we were. And the Confederacy was also quite fascist. Again, people who are experts in, quote, fascism don't talk about the fact that the Confederacy was a fascist state, but by every definition, anyway, which people won't actually tell you. People who say things that aren't fascist, they won't tell you what they think that means. Usually it means it makes them feel bad, which is not what fascism is. So the judge rebukes Justice Department, raised due process. This is the Alien Enemies Act. So the idea of the Alien Enemies Act, passed in 1798, by the way, is that if the United States is at war with a country, the president and secretary of state can kick someone out. If you'll recall what the United States looked like in 1798, kicking people out of the country in 1798 meant kicking them down like past Virginia. Like, oh, you have to go back to Florida now. That was kicking them out in 1798. Like, let me look this up real quick. The 1798 borders of the United States. Because I didn't look this up before, so we all get to learn together. Borders. See, Florida. You could have been exiled to Florida, and you would have been kicked out of the United States, or across the Mississippi River. Basically, that would have been being deported in 1798. That's That's it. It wasn't sent back overseas. It was, no, you have to go to French territory, or you have to go to Spanish territory, which is you have to go to Texas, or you have to go to Middle America, or the unclaimed Northeast, right? Or California. We exile you to California. Fuck. So anyway, they also have terminated the EPA and a lot of the Biden stuff. Biden passed a bunch of laws and worked really hard to get laws passed. Donald uses executive orders. Executive orders are not laws. They are literally orders from an executive, kind of like how a fascist would do it instead of passing laws. Now, oh gosh, you're saying that all the executive orders ever are fascist? No, I'm not. Dumb and stupid, damn it. Anyway, so also here, the Secretary of the Interior, who is just such a ridiculous clown guy. And then this guy, I actually know him. He went to high school with me. He is also a completely unethical kind of clown guy. This is one of those people why you know that religion is beyond redemption, really, at this point. Hearing him do his Father God play acting speech while doing this kind of stuff, and then cutting off billions of dollars in aid to people who need it for homes. It's really like kind of one of the more public hypocrites that you'll see, and loud about it. Yeah, Musk is retweeting Nazi lots of stuff. JD Vance also follows a bunch of Nazis. The Trump administration killed Voice of America. China's state media is delighted. Every oligarch in the world, every horrible government in the world is delighted that we have cut off this source of news and information to their citizens. I liked Voice of America. I use it quite a bit. All right. Well, so sorry, we're back. Everything crashed there for a second. By the way, the fact that how long these things take to load, they're horrible. Donald ordered this law to be defunded. What? God, all these pop-ups. Everything crashed because the memory for Chrome for news websites is so horrible. In conclusion, just to try and wrap this one up, I know we kind of got a little disjointed there at the end after everything crashed. News media websites suck. They need to be fixed. Our media is broken. That's why we slept walk into fascism, which is clearly here. People who don't realize that need to be talked to about it and clear, and have them show what they think it is, and then show them where that's happening. And if they draw the line at, well, fascism can only happen to a certain ethnic class in a certain region of Europe, so it can't happen here. I'm sorry, but it is happening here. And a lot of the folks who were victims before can't see it for some reason, which is also extremely disturbing. The disconnect is real. Have a good night. I'll talk to you soon.